This is video 1 of Computer Science 1124. Welcome back from spring break. That was a wild one, wasn't it? Let's see. We need to catch up where we were. If you remember way back at the very beginning of the semester, I talked about all these different levels of computer science, and they all together made computer science. And as you know, we wallowed around in the bits for a long time and did AND gates and OR gates and all that stuff, and I described that as being at the atomic level, electrons and neutrons and all that stuff. And then we graduated up to the bouncing ball level, which was Python programming. That's kind of mid-level of computer science. And we still really haven't touched much on the galaxies and the large stuff of computer science, and certainly the wild and crazy, mysterious theoretical stuff. So we've got like 2 big pieces to go today for the new version of the class. We start with kind of the galactic level of computer science, the way up in the sky stuff. So our very first topic is actually hugely important in computer science and software development. Object-oriented programming. You might have even heard of that. And yes, I know the whiteboard might be harder to see. I might be harder to see. There might be more glare. All kinds of experiments all the time here. This is the first day where there's really not any natural light to speak of. It's all rainy and dreary. So I've got every desk lamp in my house here pointed right at me and at the board, and I'm sorry if there's a glare. But anyway, we'll make do. At least if you can see the whiteboard, we'll be okay. This is so important. It's got its very own acronym, OOP, Object-Oriented Programming. And before we can discuss intelligently even what that is and why we need it and all that sort of stuff, we've got to get this burning question out of the way first. No, trap! What's an iPhone? What does that have to do with anything? It could be what you have in your hand. That's one answer. Another answer would be, let's see, I think there's the thing called a charge coupled device, a CCD in there, and some computer chips and stuff. I'm not even going to glorify that by writing it on the board. I don't like that answer either. What am I fishing for? Let's see. Well, it's a thing, isn't it? It's a thing that you can talk on, assuming conversations. You're not going to talk yourself on there. So it's a phone. It is a phone. So you talk on it. You ideally someone will be talking back to you, so you can listen to it. And it's a smartphone, so you can watch videos on it. You can, I suppose, record videos if you want to. And let's see, it's kind of established a pattern a little bit. I'm going to slip in a couple of just ridiculously, rudely obvious ones here. It's something that you can turn on and turn off. Why am I happy with that answer to the question when I wasn't happy with the others? Well, it turns out this is defining an iPhone in terms of what you could do with it. What the thing actually is practically irrelevant. We don't have to know what it is. We don't even have to know how it works. Thank goodness. Imagine if you had to know how your iPhone works or you weren't allowed to use an iPhone. Imagine if you had to understand how a television works, babysitting the dogs in the living room. Imagine if you had to understand how a television works to be able to use it. Fortunately, you do not. All you have to know is what a few of the buttons on the remote control of the TV actually mean. You got to know a little bit about your iPhone. Maybe it took you a little while to get up to speed. But what you were learning about it was not how it was made. You weren't learning how it worked. You were learning what to do with it, what you could do with it. And that's actually the core idea behind object-oriented programming, is that we look at things from the outside. It seems kind of strange, but we look at things from the outside, and our only concern is, what am I able to do with this kind of a thing? Big, bold line. There's one key idea in object-oriented programming. Here's another term that's got its own acronym. I'm bumping into my desk lamps here. This is a clown show. I'm sorry about that. Abstract data type. Seems like that came out of nowhere too, doesn't it, huh? Abstract data type. And guess what? Its acronym is ADT. An abstract data type. Well, let's see. Abstract is like those paintings that people throw paint out the window and call it art. There's an abstract. Data, we know what data is. We dealt with data, the rest of it. Well, here is a working definition. It is a set of operations big bold period. A set of operations, period. Where's the data? Where's the data? Well, we're not concerned with the data. This is actually, here's an example of an abstract data type. We are defining an iPhone in terms of what we can do with it. We're listing the operations. It's like we're setting this thing up and saying, if you want to call yourself a smartphone, if you want to call yourself an iPhone, you better darn well be able to do these things. How do you do them? What have you got underneath that screen? What's going on in that little electronic mind of yours? Don't know, don't care. Here's the weird thing. There really so many weird things. Everything is weird we're talking about today. It says data in the term, but there's no mention of data over here. What is it storing? What data is it using? How are the bits and bytes manipulated and arranged and all that? Again, sounds like a smart aleck answer, but don't know, don't care. We are only concerned with what the thing is. I want one of those. I want a smartphone. Now that I have one, what can I do with it? And that's it. So this is an abstract data type description of an iPhone. It's defined purely in terms of what we've got to be able to do with it. Now, it seems that it's strange that those would be big, important ideas. Here's the motivation. We'll go ahead and dive into some motivation here. Yes, this is important stuff when we're working with huge software systems. Tens of thousands of lines. Oh, wait, why limit it to that? Millions of lines! Mac OS X. That's a pretty darn big program. Perhaps millions of lines. Microsoft Word, an application program. That's at least hundreds of thousands of lines. I doubt, seriously, I'll go out on a limb and say there is no one, Microsoft anywhere else, that understands every bit of the Microsoft Word program. How it works, how all that stuff is implemented, how they make those little words pop up when you float over something. Not even the mighty Bill Gates himself understands how every bit of Microsoft Word works. The motivation for object-oriented programming was that back in the day, within my lifetime, programs got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because computers were being used for more and more and more and more things. And the machinery got more and more and more and more complex. Too complex, programs too big for any one person to be responsible for the whole thing. So somehow or another, they had to find a way to break this thing up. Like take this giant image and run it through a jigsaw and make a puzzle out of it and let each person work on one little piece. And then they can put it back together. That's the whole motivating idea behind object-oriented programming and abstract data types. Divide and conquer, break up gigantic programs into smaller components, send that off to your minion software developers in their cubicles, and then after they've gotten their little piece of the big picture all implemented and designed and debugged and all that stuff as if it's a standalone application, then you get them out of their cubicles and put all this stuff back together and voila, you've got Microsoft Word. A gigantic, more complicated program than any one person can understand. That was the motivation, just because software got too big and too complicated to be able to expect any programmer to be able to do that all on their own. Well, hope I made a convincing case of that. Maybe not. We'll see. But I'll continue to fill up my tiny little whiteboard here. This is just ever so slightly stressing me out here that I have so little whiteboard space to work with. You know what? But we're all making adjustments. We're all in this together. We'll all get by, even with tiny whiteboard. An object, this. If I implement one of these things, and what I have that I can hold in my hand is an iPhone object. An object, you can think of that as a specific instance of our implemented abstract data type. Good grief, throwing around these big terms already. Abstract data type, abstract means you've gotten rid of all the technical details. All you've done is describe what the thing can do. Then, when you actually implement this thing, then you get individual objects. An object is a concrete iPhone. That's new. Is an actual physical thing that you can hold in your hand. An iPhone is an object. Abstract data type is the design of those things, where we say, if you want to be an iPhone, you got to do all that. Now I'm repeating myself and I'll move on. Okay, an object, in other words, a specific instance of an abstract data type. Whoops, not colon yet. An object has two kind of big pieces that we need to concern ourselves with. Number one big piece, properties. Properties. Properties, and depending on which language you're learning, which object-oriented programming book you pick up, this could also be called attributes. So I'll put that up here so that if you run into that word in your vast research about object-oriented programming online, it's not going to spook you if they're not using the same terminology. Properties or attributes. And that's fairly easy to illustrate. I'm going to keep falling back on my iPhone object idea until further notice. So for example here, properties, your background image. I assume you set that on an iPhone. Okay, confession time. I'm old, and even though I'm a computer scientist, I still have a flip phone. But that's just between you and me, don't tell anybody. I think it has a background image, so I'm going to put that as a property or an attribute. It also has a ringtone. Might even have several. I'll make that plural. Ringtones. Ringtones. Those are like they're like the nouns and adjectives. They're like part of the state of the iPhone. The iPhone has a current background image set, therefore it is a property or attribute of that particular iPhone object. A ringtone for your BFF. Look at me using all these slang terms. A ringtone for your BFF, that is a particular property or attribute that you can set on the phone, and then it stays set until you go in and change it. That's an important idea. The other important idea, and yes, I'm running out of board space, but mercifully there are only two. The other main one is methods. methods. And yes, there are alternative terms for that. One that you'll run into a lot. Or member functions. If for no other reason, I'm gonna prefer methods because it's less writing. I'm less likely to misspell that. Methods, those are actually the things you can do with it. For example, some methods, I can turn up the volume so I can hear better. Increase volume, increase, decrease volume. What else can I do? Well, you know what? I can cheat and look up here. Background image. I can set background image. BKRND image. IMG. Heavily abbreviated. Man, if you thought I was abbreviating before, you're going to have to hang on here. You might even have to back up and listen to me again because you're not going to be able to read my handwriting at all. But this says set background image. What's another one? Change text font. I suppose you could do that. Let's see. What pattern is developing here? Well, properties, these are kind of static things. These are things that sort of describe settings and things that are true of the iPhone right now as we speak. but they're not, these are not activities. These are the methods. If these are like the nouns and adjectives, then these are the verbs. The methods, I'm going to set something, or I'm going to unset something. I'm going to reset something back to factory settings. I'm going to change the text font. I'm going to increase the volume, decrease the volume. All of those involve activities. All involve changing something. Typically, they involve changing things about the properties. Not necessarily. When we get to actual Python objects, something like printing a number to the screen. Maybe you've got an object that's calculating a course test grade. Don't even worry about that now. I'm sorry I brought it up. But maybe you've got a method that does something like that, and then it prints out a value to the screen. It doesn't necessarily change the properties, but it could. And also turning on and off. Turn on, off. That's also activities. Those are activities that you can do. I've eaten up over 15 minutes already with just this. Holy moly. Well, you know what? This is an intro, a whiteboard full of object-oriented programming, and I'm going to chop off video 1 right there. See you online.